The great hall of Shadowmere Pack was filled with candlelight and the low hum of hushed voices. Banners bearing the pack's silver wolf crest hung from the wooden beams above, and the scent of pine and smoke drifted through the air. Tonight was supposed to be a night of honor, a gathering to welcome visiting alphas from across the northern territories. For Alira Voss, it was just another night to survive. She stood near the back of the hall, her plain gray dress a sharp contrast to the fine furs and jeweled collars worn by the rest of the pack. Nobody looked at her unless it was to sneer. Nobody spoke to her unless it was to remind her of what she was not. 3 years had passed since her coming-of-age ceremony, the night every wolf in the pack was supposed to shift for the first time and claim their place among their kin. Alira had knelt before the moon that night, waiting for the change to take her, waiting for the fire in her blood to rise. It never came. She had stayed human while the rest of her generation ran through the trees as wolves, howling their triumph to the sky. Since that night, she had been given a single word to carry, one that followed her everywhere she went. Worthless. Her own father would not meet her eyes anymore. Her mother had stopped defending her after the first year, worn down by the weight of the pack's judgment. Alira had learned to keep her head low and her voice quiet, to disappear into corners where no one would notice her. But tonight, there was no corner large enough to hide in. Alira. The voice belonged to Councilman Draith, a broad man with cold eyes and a colder heart. He gestured toward the long table where the visiting alphas sat. Since you have no wolf to offer this pack, the least you can do is serve those who do. Pour the wine, do not spill it. A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the nearby pack members. Alira felt her cheeks burn, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that arguing only made things worse. She picked up the heavy pitcher of wine and walked toward the table, her hands trembling slightly, though she willed them to be still. She was halfway through pouring for the third guest when the doors of the hall opened. A gust of cold night air swept through the room, carrying with it the scent of pine and something else, something ancient and powerful that made every wolf in the hall instinctively lower their gaze. Conversation stopped. Even Councilman Draith straightened his spine. Cale Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Wolf Dominion, stepped into the hall. He was tall, with dark hair and eyes the color of a stormy sky, and he moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had never once questioned his own strength. His presence alone seemed to fill the room, pressing against the walls like a living thing. Cale had built his reputation through decades of battle and unshaken leadership. He had never taken a mate, never bowed to the pull of fate that so many wolves spoke of with reverence. He believed the bond between mates was a distraction, a weakness that could be exploited by enemies. He ruled alone, and he ruled well. He had come to Shadowmere only to finalize a treaty that would end years of tension between their territories, nothing more. He expected a quick negotiation, a formal dinner, and a swift return home. He did not expect what happened next. His eyes swept across the hall, taking in the nervous bows and lowered heads of the Shadowmere Pack. Then his gaze landed on Alira. She was standing frozen near the long table, the pitcher of wine still in her hands, her simple gray dress marking her as someone of little importance in a room full of silk and fur. And yet Cale felt something shift inside his chest, a pull so sudden and so powerful that it nearly stole the breath from his lungs. It was as if the entire world had narrowed down to this one moment, this one girl, standing quietly amid a room that had clearly decided she did not matter. The bond. He had heard stories of it his whole life, the recognition between fated mates that struck like lightning and could never be denied. He had dismissed those stories as sentimental nonsense, but standing here now, staring at a girl he had never met before, he understood for the first time that the stories had been true all along. Alira felt his gaze on her like a physical weight, and she quickly looked down, certain that whatever was happening was not meant for her. Alphas like Cale Draven did not look at girls like her, not unless it was with the same disdain everyone else carried. "Who is she?" Cale's voice cut through the silence of the hall, low and steady, but carrying an authority that made everyone straighten. Councilman Draith stepped forward, a thin smile on his lips. "A minor member of the pack, my king. She failed to shift during her ceremony. We keep her on to serve, as she is of little other use." A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. Alira kept her eyes on the floor, her fingers tightening around the pitcher, bracing herself for whatever cruel words might come next. She had heard variations of this speech 100 times before. She expected nothing different tonight. But Cale did not laugh. He did not sneer. Instead, he walked forward, each step deliberate, until he stood directly in front of her. Up close, she could feel the sheer power radiating from him, an intensity that made the hair on her arms rise. She forced herself to look up, meeting his stormy eyes for the first time. The moment their gazes locked, something in the air changed. Illyra felt it too, a warmth spreading through her chest, a strange and sudden certainty that this stranger was somehow, impossibly, connected to her. She had never felt anything like it. Her wolf, silent and dormant for 3 long years, stirred faintly beneath her skin, as if waking from a deep sleep. Cale's jaw tightened. He turned to face the room, his voice ringing out with a command that left no room for argument. "This woman is my mate." The hall fell into stunned silence. Even Councilman Draith's confident smile faltered. "She is my fated Luna," Cale continued, his eyes never leaving Illyra's face. "And I will not stand here and listen to my mate be called worthless, in front of a room that clearly does not understand what it is looking at." Illyra's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to believe this was some cruel trick, some new form of humiliation designed to cut even deeper than the last. But the look in Cale's eyes held no mockery, only a fierce and unwavering certainty. "My king," Councilman Draith stammered. "She cannot shift. She has no wolf. Whatever bond you believe you feel must be mistaken." Cale's expression darkened. "A wolf does not choose its mate based on whether the council approves. The bond does not lie, and it does not make mistakes. If she has not shifted, then something is wrong, and I intend to find out what." He turned back to Illyra, his voice softening slightly, though the authority in it never wavered. "Come with me." Illyra hesitated. Her entire life she had been taught to accept her place, to never expect more than scraps of kindness from a world that had already decided her worth. But something in Cale's steady gaze told her that this moment was different, that perhaps, for the first time, someone was choosing her rather than discarding her. She set down the pitcher of wine and stepped forward. The journey to the Northern Wolf Dominion took 2 days by carriage, through winding forest roads and over quiet rivers. Illyra spent much of it in silence, unsure of what to say to the powerful man sitting across from her. Cale, for his part, seemed content to let the silence stretch, though she often caught him watching her with quiet curiosity, as though trying to understand a puzzle he had not expected to encounter. "Why does everyone treat you the way they do?" he finally asked on the second night, as they sat near a small fire during a stop along the road. Illyra wrapped her arms around her knees, staring into the flames. "Because I failed. Every wolf is supposed to shift when they come of age. It proves their strength, their place in the pack. I knelt under the moon, and nothing happened. My parents were ashamed. The council decided I was cursed, or broken, or simply not worth the trouble of caring about. And you believed them?" She looked up at him, surprised by the directness of the question. What else was I supposed to believe? I felt nothing that night. No fire, no change. Just emptiness. Cale studied her for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "I have led wolves for over a decade. I have seen curses, bindings, and suppressions placed on unsuspecting pack members by those who feared their strength. What you describe does not sound like a broken wolf. It sounds like a silenced one." Illyra's chest tightened at his words. "You think someone did this to me, on purpose?" "I think," Cale said carefully, "that the bond between us would not have called to you so strongly if there were nothing beneath the surface. Wolves recognize wolves, Illyra. Whatever is inside you did not disappear. It was hidden." That night, for the first time in 3 years, Illyra allowed herself to hope. Weeks passed at the Northern Dominion. Cale assigned his most trusted healer, an elderly woman named Sable who specialized in ancient bindings, to examine Illyra. Sable spent long hours studying old texts and testing the strange stillness beneath Illyra's skin. Cale visited often, and in those quiet visits, something began to grow between them, a friendship built on patience and understanding that slowly deepened into something warmer. He told her stories of his own struggles as a young alpha, of the loneliness that came with leadership, of his long-held belief that he would never find someone who understood the weight he carried. She told him about her childhood, about the small moments of joy she had clung to, even as the world around her grew colder. For the first time in years, Alira felt seen, not as a burden or a disappointment, but simply as herself. Then, one crisp autumn evening, Sable finally uncovered the truth. "There is a binding here," the old healer said, her fingers hovering just above Alira's chest. "Old and deliberate. Someone placed a seal on your wolf the night of your ceremony, likely someone close to you, someone who feared what your true bloodline might reveal." Alira's mind raced back through the years, to the cold distance in her mother's eyes, to the strange tension that had always existed between her family and the pack elders. She thought of a distant aunt who had once eyed her with something like fear rather than affection. "Can it be broken?" Kale asked, his voice tight with barely restrained anger on Alira's behalf. Sable nodded slowly. "It can. But it will take strength, and it will take the presence of her true mate. The bond between fated pairs can shatter even the oldest of bindings." That night, beneath a full moon in the heart of the Northern Dominion's forest, Kale stood beside Alira as Sable guided them through the ritual. Alira closed her eyes, feeling Kale's steady presence beside her, his hand wrapped firmly around hers. She thought of every moment she had been told she was worthless, every cruel word, every lowered gaze. And then she thought of Kale's voice ringing through that hall, declaring her his mate without hesitation. Something inside her cracked open. A surge of warmth spread through her body, followed by a fire she had never known before. Her bones shifted, her skin rippled, and for the first time in her life, Alira felt her wolf answer the call of the moon. When the transformation settled, she stood, not as an ordinary wolf, but as something rare and radiant, her fur a shimmering silver that seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. Sable gasped, falling back a step. "The Lumen bloodline," the old healer whispered in awe. "I thought it had died out generations ago." Kale watched Alira with open wonder, pride swelling in his chest. The woman the Shadowmere Council had cast aside as worthless stood before him now, revealed as one of the rarest and most powerful bloodlines their kind had ever known. Word of Alira's true nature spread quickly, reaching even the ears of Shadowmere's council. Councilman Draith, humiliated by his own misjudgment, sent word demanding her return, claiming she belonged to their pack and their bloodline, but Kale would not yield. "She belongs to no one who once cast her aside," he declared before his own council, and the messengers sent from Shadowmere. "She is my mate, my equal, and the future Luna of this dominion. Anyone who challenges that will answer to me." Alira, standing tall beside him, felt no fear in that moment, only a quiet strength she had never known before. She was no longer the girl who knelt in humiliation, pouring wine for those who despised her. She was becoming someone new, someone powerful, someone chosen. In the following months, Alira embraced her place within the Northern Dominion, learning to harness the strength of her rare bloodline while growing closer to Kale with each passing day. Their bond deepened into a love built on mutual respect, understanding, and quiet devotion. When the time came for her formal Luna ceremony, wolves from both dominions gathered beneath the same full moon that had once refused to answer her call. Kale took her hands in his before the entire gathering, his eyes filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with power or politics. "They branded you worthless," he said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. "But I see you for exactly what you are, my equal, my mate, my eternal Luna." As the moon rose high above them, Alira felt the last of her old fears dissolve into the night air. She was no longer defined by the cruelty of those who had once judged her. She stood now as a queen, chosen not out of pity, but out of a bond deeper than fate itself, ready to lead beside the one person who had never once doubted her worth.